Welcome back to Hacking Diversity Las Vegas. We've had some amazing programming so far. We've had talks from Eric Leslie at Amazon, and we've had our keynote, Deidre Diamond, and now we welcome Megan Roddie with Strengthen Your SeCops Team by Leveraging Neurodiversity. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks for coming to see me speak. I guess I'll go ahead and get started. So, just a quick introduction. My name's Megan. My educational background is in digital forensics and math. Right now I work as a security analyst with Recon InfoSec. I, like many of the keynote speakers who were just mentioned, have 2 decades experience in life. And the reason I am an expert in terms of speaking on this topic is I have Asperger's syndrome. So I want to go into kind of starting with the bad stuff and ending with the good stuff. Gonna tell you why I'm such a pain to work with, and then I'll tell you why you're gonna work with me anyway. So, quick disclaimer, I don't like to piss other autistic people off, and so I always add this disclaimer that I was not elected all supreme leader of the autistic people, so I'm talking from my experience. I'm talking for a specific narrowed group of InfoSec interested and skilled autistic individuals, not the entire world. So I always start with this quote that I like. Steve Silberman's a autism advocate. He's done TED Talks on working with individuals with autism. And the way he describes neurodiversity is that you should think about human operating systems at this conference. You'll see people with Windows and Linux and Mac, and we judge each other, but everyone's got their preference, and none of them are technically broken. My favorite analogy that I've seen is that teams in InfoSec should be just like teams that do sports, is that you don't build a team based on uniformity, and you don't just get the best kickers or the best quarterbacks or the best whatever other positions there are in football. You try and you get a diversity of different skill sets so that together the entire team can be effective and bring the skill set. If you get everyone with just one skill, you're going to lose. So I'm focusing on a set of characteristics: high productivity, attention to detail, logical and calculated thinking, passion for work, and hyper-focus on tasks, specifically talking about high-functioning autistic individuals, such as myself. So the problem that I'm attempting to fix when I am giving this presentation is that there's a high unemployment rate among high-functioning autistics. And you may think this is like the stereotype that autistic individuals can't necessarily hold a job, but research shows that about 97% of autistic individuals are of average or above average intelligence as compared to neurotypicals and can hold a job, yet only a small percentage of individuals hold a full-time, autistic individuals hold a full-time employment job, and still a lower subset of individuals hold a part-time job. And interestingly enough, it's harder to get a job as an autistic individual than physical disabilities, and it's already known to be difficult with any disability to get a job. So that's the issue I'm trying to accomplish by kind of spreading the word. And I don't think it's because, like I said, there's very few intellectual disabilities at work here. I believe it's because the social behavioral disabilities, which do exist, talking about a few things that affect me that would kind of reflect negatively on a group of people. I'm really bad at controlling my volume level and pitch, so I tend to speak at like how I speak to an audience at a conference is how I speak in one-on-one conversations. It annoys people and it seems like a small thing, but it can be something that turns people off, like when you're interviewing someone and you're automatically thinking, I don't want to sit with this person in an office for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So even though it may sound like a small thing as I mention it now, it can cause problems. I also don't really think about what I say. I'm very blunt with what I say. if I think it's the truth, I'll say it, and that can get me in a lot of trouble. So I tell a lot of important people to call the help desk or to write an email instead of calling us, and apparently that's not how it goes in the real world. I offend a lot of people because I'll like tell them what I think. Like, if you want an honest opinion about your clothing, like ask me because I'll tell you what I think. I don't really have the social finesse that is typically considered important. This is an example of another kind of weird thing. It doesn't really affect the way that I would work with you or my skills as a security professional, but you find me weird. I buy the same clothes in bulk because I'm very finicky about the clothing I wear, and like a few years ago I bought a pair of jeans. They're my favorite jeans. I loved them. I only bought one pair. They got a hole in, and it was like the worst day of my life. You would have thought a family member died when I got those jeans. My mom had to email the CEO of like the head departments of Guess and see if they had any of these jeans in their warehouse from when they stopped selling them. And they didn't, so I got a new pair of jeans. I liked them, and I bought 6 pairs of them, and I'm wearing them now. I have 3 in my suitcase here in Vegas. So again, like, you don't really think, again, me saying it now, you may not think about it much, but it's one of those quirks where, like, humans judge people, and it's that weird thing. For me, it's clothing sensitivity. For other individuals, it could be light sensitivity, sound sensitivity. In the same way I'm sensitive about my clothes, if you put me in an interview, there's a lot of individuals with autism who are very sensitive to, like, fluorescent lights. So if you put them in an interview room with fluorescent lights, so then they're already nervous about the interview, and now they have that thing that they can't stand in that room, they're going to behave even stranger than usual. So it's kind of important to make sure that you not take these quirks as something that's going to make the person fail at their job. It's just a weird way of behaving. I put this photo in here for two reasons. First is to point out that I have a word game and 30 days to multiplication mastery, and you would have think my parents bought me a car. Like, I was way too happy, and so I'm a weird nerd. The other reason, I kind of make this my visual representation of how my brain works sometimes. I'm 21 years old, but about 50% of the time I am operating at the social and behavioral level of 8-year-old me. So that kind of brings troubles in, especially with communication and socializing. I often communicate with the skill level of an 8-year-old. If I get upset about something and I don't know how to respond properly, I believe the silent treatment's the right answer. I've learned recently silent treatment is not a good way to interact with colleagues, and but like in my brain, like is like, well, if I say something, I'm gonna mess up, so I'm just gonna say nothing. I was following my attempt at silent treatment. I was asked, "Are you giving me the silent treatment?" And I went to that blunt yes. Don't do it. Lesson learned. But there's a lot of things, aspects of my life that I'm in a situation, and I'm no longer 21. I'm 8-year-old me. But that's probably one of the most difficult things to work with. I don't usually used to talk about in my talk, but it's one of the biggest impacts. And if I'm going to talk about everything else, I might as well talk about that. So, despite all these things, there are companies that are working with autistic individuals and are very pleased with the outcome. An Australian study, so the US I found like because I researched for this presentation, while it's based on a lot of personal experience, I also put a lot of research into other people's experiences along with scientific research that's been done. And surprisingly, not much research has been done in the U.S. About autistic individuals, especially in STEM fields. But an Australian survey, they talked to 59 employers about their autistic employees, and the feedback was leaning on the positive side, that there's above average performance. There was a new mindset, kind of that diverse sports team thing of they had new different skills that they never had before. and that there was positive adaptations to the work culture. Though they may have struggled, or there may have been things that they had to work through, over time it improved. And despite the stigma surrounding hiring individuals with disabilities, and that there's all those ADA costs and you're gonna have to put money into the employee that you wouldn't have to in other employees, there's no additional significant costs. Software companies are a large number. They have a large number of them, especially the big ones like SAP and Microsoft and New Relic. They all have programs that are designed at hiring autistic individuals. So that can range from changing the interview style so that it's something that kind of meshes with the thinking patterns of autistic individuals. It can be having sessions where they work with managers on how to work with autistic individuals, and they work with autistic individuals on how to work with managers, things like that. So my favorite one when I was reading about these different programs was SAP. Their reasoning was that if 1% of the world was autistic, then logically 1% of their workforce should be autistic. Probably my favorite example, one I found early on in my research, was Unit 9900 of the Israeli Army's Visual Intelligence team. So in Israel, when you turn 18, you have to join the military and serve time in the military. And they found that a lot of high-functioning autistic individuals were upset when they received the letter in the mail saying, sorry, we don't need you because you're disabled. Because these individuals, they're of course growing up with their peers. All their 18-year-old friends are going to the military and they're left at home told like, yeah, we don't need you, it's cool. So when they realized there's a lot of these individuals wanting to participate, even though they were previously turned away, they decided to stand up an individual unit to kind of test what would happen. And they found out that these individuals were really good at spending long periods of time in front of monitors, doing differentials against satellite images. So did something appear on the side of the road that could indicate an IED or something like that? Is there movement that could indicate enemy forces moving in? So that, and the outcome I really liked about this story is that after enough time working with these individuals, a lot of them enjoyed the work they were doing with the Visual Intelligence Division, but some of them wanted to go experience some of the different other fields they could work in. And they had learned working in this unit that it really wasn't that hard to work with autistic individuals, and so they helped them adjust to other teams that previously they were turned away from. Aspertise is a company that, along with many other companies, some of them, there's a few kind of different company types in here. A few of these companies are like MSSPs and MSPs. They hire a bunch of autistic individuals that other people don't want to hire, that they find skilled, and then they contract the employees out to companies, and they kind of work with those clients. Like, they'll give those clients a heads up, like, hey, sorry about this person already, but we promise it's worth it. And so they're kind of that, they allow them to be a middleman and give them the work to do. They'll keep them out of customer-facing roles if they don't have to be. Aspertise, the one I showed in the previous slide, they work a lot to adapt to their employees. They had an employee who was coming into work with a lot of anxiety. They figured out it was because he didn't have a car, so he had to ride the subway, and he couldn't deal with the stress of the subway. So they bought a company car and lent it to him to drive to work so that he didn't have to deal with the subway. So the companies work with the employees because they know how to handle the employees well, but they get the skills and skills of these individuals. Other companies, Specialist Guild, I believe is one of them, Non-Parietal Institute, they'll train individuals who are looking to getting into security or programming or tech. They'll train them, and then at the end of the training, they'll work and help them find job positions in the field, and then work with that hiring company to learn what adjustments may be needed for that individual. JP Morgan is a cool one that they had an autism hiring program, and they found that hiring autistic individuals into the job positions they were hiring for, the technology division, it took them in 3 to 6 months, they were doing the amount of work that people who took 3 years to train were doing, and they were doing it at a 50% higher productivity rate. So how do we go about getting past the issues and getting to a point that these other companies and organizations have gotten to? First, awareness, looking at benefits instead of just problems. I'm not saying there are no challenges, there are no problems. I've already made it clear there are, but it's important that you balance that out and don't just go to the negatives as you would with other people. You look at their resume and you identify their strengths as well as their weaknesses, not just their weaknesses. And like I said, there are issues, you need to adapt. I'm not saying you don't have to adapt when I'm giving this talk. I'm saying the adaptations are worth it. So go into that mindset that you can't just manage your employees like you manage the autistic employees like you do all your other employees. So how can you go about adapting? The first one, I don't go into detail much because I've gotten really lucky. Unlike most autistic individuals, I've not struggled with interviews. I've not struggled getting into the job position. However, one thing that they struggle with is job postings and job interviews. Job postings, especially in tech, are they're very, very narrowed. As this tweet says, we're putting job postings with X years experience and Y degree, and these specific skills are required. And like I've learned that a lot of neurotypical individuals, they like see those job postings and they're like, well, I don't have 3 years experience, but I've got 2 years, but I also don't just have that one degree, I have a dual major, so it kind of makes up for it. Like if I put in my resume and they don't think I'm qualified and that requirement was strict, then no big deal. Whereas I'm looking at this and like, if it's 3 years experience and I've worked for 2 years and 11 months, like in my head, I'm not qualified for this job. Or if they have a particular program, they ask for Python experience and I have Go experience, but not Python. I don't think, well, I could learn, like there's some similarities and I'm good at programming. I think they don't want me.
Would it help if it said preferred instead of required?
Yes.
Okay.
Because preferred does not indicate a strict requirement. So, and interviews, I'll comment on it quick because most people during Q&A ask about it. Interviews also are not formatted in a way that is good for autistic individuals. They're going to have anxiety, be nervous, sitting in front of a panel, being asked a bunch of questions. I highly advocate technical interviews where you put the person in front of the computer doing things that they would do in the role and watch them go. Because I'm a lot of individuals like me, like I would be thinking about the fact that I'm interviewing if I'm plopped in front of a computer and you said go, like I'm like, okay, cool, let's do all this stuff. I'm great at this. You asking me a bunch of trivia questions may make me nervous, may make me stressed out. That's a lot of social interaction. So I like, also like I'm helping run OpenSock at the CTF at the Blue Team Village this week. And like I encourage a lot of people who are looking for employees to sit and watch the participants and watch the people at the top of the scoreboard, because that's a better indicator of people who are going to be suited for a security analyst role than somebody who can answer the security questions off of a Cisco CCNA security exam or Sec Plus exam. So that's kind of my opinion on interviews. And a lot of people are like, well, great, I can't do that. Like I spoke at a state conference and they're like, we have to ask interview questions. So I was like, okay, then there needs to be a culture change. Like there's not a solution. Like just because the solution's hard doesn't mean that it should be thrown away. So that's kind of a mindset a culture change that needs to happen. So start off by forgetting how you manage your neurotypical employees. It's not going to work. Great to do it the same way. You'll encounter issues. It does take time to learn how to do this communications, both from the manager and the employee perspective and the coworker perspective. For what it's worth is just you're not going to know going in what works, and often the autistic employee, especially going to their first job, they're not going to know what works. So you have to kind of take the time and figure out what's going to work for the both of you. So an example that I use to kind of like show a situation where you might manage differently is if there's like a limit of availability, resources, bandwidth at work for new projects, but the employee's really excited about that project and they really want to work on something. You may tell a neurotypical employee that's like, oh, that's great. Remind me about it when we're less busy though, because we're tight on resources. There's a lot of stress that comes from me about that less side statement that wouldn't come to most people, because less busy is it's ambiguous, it's subjective. Like, I don't know what's less busy for you because I can do a lot and not feel busy, whereas most people get more overwhelmed with a smaller amount of stuff. So either I'm going to ask you sooner than I should, and then there's that frustration of like, I told you less busy, and or I'm going to worry about that situation occurring and I'm never going to bring it up again. So the way that you approach a high-functioning autistic employee is get more granular. Remind me about it in a couple weeks, a couple months, a couple years. The time period doesn't really matter. It's the fact that you can put a date on a calendar, and if I come to you and you're like, we're still busy, you can move that date. I don't feel bad that we're still busy because you said to come at that date, and so it's cool, we'll move the date. So kind of that more objective, specific timelines, and basically anything where neurotypical would have to, or like when you're talking, anything you say that the person has to interpret what you mean is not a good way to communicate with me. Solid dates or solid statements are a lot easier for me to understand and work with. Oh, that's supposed to be a GIF. I have a PDF now. So it said, well, that was easy, but... So the high level of this is that I need structure and routine. I need clarity. Probably most important, patience and understanding that a lot of times if I'm upsetting you or I'm saying something that would usually be taken one way, I probably don't mean it that way. A lot of people in text or in IM will neurotypicals will try to inflect, kind of imply or inflect emotion. And I communicate where what I say is what I mean. So if you're trying to interpret emotion from my texts or direct messages, you shouldn't be, because I'm just saying what I'm saying. I'm not trying to I'm not thinking about phrasing. But if you are willing to make these changes and work on these things, then you're going to have a highly productive employee producing thorough work. And probably one of the things that, if I'm ever a manager, one of the things I would find important is a dedicated and passionate employee, not someone who's coming for a paycheck and then leaving at the end of the day and hating to come back tomorrow. You have someone who enjoys what they're doing. So examples of this, routine and structure. I've found that this is not easy as an incident responder. A lot of times, having an IR engagement, I love doing it. I love the work. I find it exciting. I wouldn't change my job to do anything else. But those days after are stressful because it just threw a wrench in my routine. I had a 3 p.m. meeting, but I had to cancel it because of this, and now I'm doing this. And I usually stop work at 5, but I'm going till 7 because there's an incident. It really messes with my brain, but I love the work. So what I decided to do instead of focusing on making my work day and meetings the routine and structure, I find something else to implement. So now every time I go into the office, I swing by Chick-fil-A and I order the exact same thing every single time. That's my routine. I go to the gym and take kickboxing classes every Tuesday and Thursday between 6 and 8 p.m., and that's my routine. And so I realized that with my job, routine's not easy, so I have to find some other things to rely on routine. Something like getting breakfast, that an IR thing might be happening, but I could Uber Eats or DoorDash Chick-fil-A to make me feel better that I have that same breakfast every morning. I get bored easily. Typically when I get bored, I get annoying. I'm like, give me something, give me something, give me something. So you shouldn't look at this as a disadvantage, but instead look at it as a benefit, because if I'm bored and need something to do, I'll pretty much do anything. At my last job, I did requisition orders and travel reimbursements and everything that no one wants to do, but I was bored and I'd rather do that. A lot of employees, when like work runs out, it's like, oh, just hang out till something shows up, and you'll go on Facebook or Twitter, or you'll work on personal projects, and like that's never been something I've been able to do. Like if I'm on the work clock, I'm on the work clock. It's not like, oh, there's nothing to do, so I'll just wait till something pops up and jump into that. So it may seem like an annoying thing and like always need stuff, but leverage it to your advantage and make it something where you can get somebody to happily do work that is typically the grunt work. Getting non-specific directions is easy. There's usually either two outcomes. Either I can't do the work and it's kind of like, I need more, or I try and do the work and I misinterpret it, and then I waste several hours on something that I took the wrong direction with. So typically it's easier to give me direction, but then the other part of it is I'm aiming to learn. So I want to learn kind of the typical approach to handling things. If I did it wrong, or if I might do it wrong, I want to learn like, well, what's based on previous projects I've done, like how should I go when I'm given a task like this? So both supporting me from the aspect of giving me the clarity I need, but also, well, giving that clarity, giving some direction so that one day in the future you don't have to give me a line-by-line item. I think that's why I liked school so much for the first 7 years of university until I hated it, is because they gave me homework, and completely impractical for actually learning anything that will help me in the workforce. But like the homework would be like, click here, then click this button, then type in this line, then hit submit. And like it was very clear what to do. It did not help me any way, shape, or form with my actual work needs for knowledge for work. But I liked it because they told me what to do and I knew what to do. So that's something where you can support the employee. I get obsessed with things. It's died down over the years. I've worked on it a lot. When I get obsessed with things, consumes my time, consumes my brain, consumes most of my life. So it's taken a lot of years working on it. When I was a teen, I had a Doctor Who obsession for a while. Changed to various things, but it would consume every minute of my day. Sometimes I couldn't focus on school or work because I was thinking about my obsession. It also becomes annoying. Like, I'm that person, like, you sit down with at a bar and you're like, I'm going to socialize with this random person I met at DEF CON. Then I'm, like, spewing on about something you care nothing about for, like, 6 hours, and you're like, so how about we talk about this other thing? Wait, but you don't even know what I'm about to say about the topic that I love. And so I'm that annoyed, and that's, like, another thing where, like, I don't want to hang out with this person. It makes people not want to hang out with you. But the way I say to leverage this as an employer is use that obsession to get them interested in something that will help you. So if you find that your team has no analysts who can do memory forensics, and so that's a gap, get that employee some links to websites or some online challenges, or give them some direction on how to learn memory forensics. And it's something like, if it were me and I'm like given something to learn, like all outside of all hours, I'll be at home, I'll be learning this stuff, I'll be trying all the things. And then all of a sudden, you've created a SME in your organization, an expert on memory forensics, where before you had no one who knew what they were doing. Last thing is, a lot of times what we could use is a mentor, someone who will not just help the individual learn what they need, procedures and operations manuals, but instead will help them learn how to succeed through the entire workforce. Just because I work with someone now who's willing to work with me and is understanding, I don't find, oh, that's okay, that's just that person's, she's just autistic, it's okay, I'll ignore it. That's not going to help me in the long run, because if I were to leave my job and go work for someone else, get a job somewhere else, and they don't like it, I'm probably going to be fired, because if they don't have the patience and understanding. So even if it's taking an opportunity where you think that the answer is, oh, it's okay, that's just how she thinks, instead saying, I understand that this is why you see it that way, however, in the role you're in, this is how I would instead approach it. So that's the end of my talk. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So, a little on my background, I suffered massive head injuries several years ago.
Yeah.
Going through the process of relearning everything. So
Yep.
relearning breathing, using my eyes, talking, moving,
Mhm.
and writing. Now with memory coming back and having the experience of having been neuronormal,
Yeah.
I guess you could say before that.
Yeah.
And then in this process, having to, because part of what happened was basically every filter was removed.
Yeah.
So hyperstimulation
Mhm.
is constant. Like
Yeah.
That is constant. So therefore, as I started approaching relearning, I did it with the help of a woman who had worked with autistic children
Yeah.
for a long time. So we worked through, creating things to where I
Mhm.
was separating out just 3 words at a time
Yeah.
to look at, and everything else had to be dark and silent, and
Yep.
I had blinders on, like, I had to remove every other stimulation. So now, with having gone through that experience and feeling that now I operate and I understand, and having been years in neuro facilities,
Mhm.
I understand or relate a lot more to ASCII or
Yeah.
autism interacting,
Yeah.
and I'm much more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of just like it.
It's a lot simpler
It's
when you
simpler.
don't think about all
no
the stigmas.
ambiguity.
Yes.
Exactly. And
It
I'm
is how it
all
is.
for that.
It'll sometimes get you in trouble, but mostly it makes interactions a lot easier. Like, people come up to me and they're like, who is that person? And I'll be like, who are you? And they're like, you asked them? I'm like, you want to know who they are? Like,
And
yeah.
so that has been, and I knew that for myself, I
Yeah.
had to give myself like qualitative
Mhm.
things, even on things that neuronormal wouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, I had to give myself, break it down. Okay, in my mind, like, here, I'm going to do this as 30% this, 70% this, or 30% here, 25 here. So I'll know how
Yeah.
to prioritize. What I want to know right now, or input from you, is what are some of the things that are most beneficial that you find for high-functioning autistic people for bridging or for mentoring or for those words like the signifiers and things that a mentor can give that help them go, oh yeah, okay, I get what you're saying now, and then I
Yeah.
can apply this.
It's a lot of, like, for kind of from the mentor role, like, not thinking, because, like, there's a lot of things that, like, I don't understand, that it's just like, but it makes sense. Like, I'll say something, it's like, you can't say that. It's like, why?
Right.
Well, you just can't. Okay, why?
See, those are the things,
Yeah.
because that's what I find now. What I do is, like, whenever, I will never say,
Yeah.
you just can't. I'll say,
Mhm.
well, because it then
Yeah.
starts a series of events that this,
Exactly.
this
And that's like, from the role of a mentor, is dropping learning that you just can't isn't really,
It's not an
it's
answer.
not a
It's
good
not
answer.
Yeah,
And
never
so
been a
it's
lot.
actually,
it's never
it's
helpful.
it's
Like,
a
no, I
skill,
can. I
yeah.
absolutely can.
Yeah.
Watch me.
Yeah, so it's a skill for the mentor to pick up, but it's not an easy thing. I understand from their perspective, that's not an easy thing. Taking something is like asking, like, what is the color red? And it's like, it's red. Like, okay, but what is it? Like, so it's a skill you have to learn about, kind of like when you're talking to a young child who doesn't understand anything, taking that same approach of, like,
But without
well, it's just a kid.
condescension or demeanor.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
say the word can't for one.
Yeah.
Can't
Don't
is a terrible word to use
Yeah.
because can't implies that I can't.
Yeah.
And then,
So
of
don't
course,
even
like,
go
a lot of
down
people
that.
take that as a challenge in their mind
Yeah.
mentally.
Right.
So if you say shouldn't, then it becomes
Yeah.
a conversation about.
It's conditional.
I mean, like-
Then it becomes
Instead of-
conditional,
Yeah,
and now it's
yeah.
a conversation you could have.
So, like,
Then it's
for
a problem.
all extensive purposes, think of me as like a 5-year-old of, like, I don't understand for a reason. Like, I haven't learned that yet. So yeah.
Like, a couple weeks ago, I was at a hackerspace, and it was my first time there, and one of the gentlemen that were working in, like, the open area,
Mhm.
after we had talked a little bit, he goes, I'd like to warn you that a lot of the people that hang out here are kind of aspy.
Yeah.
I was like, that's good. I'm
Yep.
like, I'm okay with that. And he's like, he stared at me kind of like, really?
Yeah.
You know?
It's a unique characteristic. It's a unique type of personality to
Well,
interact with.
Do you feel like, so what I said next was, I said, I don't offend easily.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem
Yeah.
with straightforward or blunt
Yeah.
conversation. And he goes, okay. And I said, no, I worked for years on construction sites and
Yeah.
in police departments. I don't, he goes, that I can understand. That means you were
Yeah.
in areas that were usually harsh or
Yeah.
offensive. And I said, yeah, I don't have, he goes, okay. And
Yep.
so then after that, he's like, okay, and then he just started talking. You know, like,
Yeah.
it's like he could just,
Yeah.
But I want to know other things like that for words, or what is the most respectful way to let people know, like with high functioning autism, that no, you really can connect and
Yeah.
not going to give you a weird
So,
look or like.
I mean, I can't say everyone, like, again, I don't speak for every autistic individual, but, like, I've come to the realization that, like, as I talk, I know that I do things that aren't considered socially appropriate. Like, I don't know the specific things I'm doing, but I know that it may occur that I do things that aren't socially appropriate. So it's about, like, preparing yourself not to make that rash reaction, like, I say something, it's like, you can't say that, you're blah, like, going off. Like, taking that 1 second to think, maybe they don't understand. And, like, being like, do you understand that you can't say that? And again, I'm blunt. No. Like, I don't, why not? So,
Do you
and then go ahead.
feel that it's, because what I try to look for is the kernel of intent behind what was being said
Yeah.
or done, not what was being done or said.
Yeah, and I think for, like, me, there is no intent. And that's the thing with, like, me and a lot of other autistic individuals. I have no intent. What I say is literally what I say. So kind of take everything I say with, like, a grain of salt of, like, you know, that she's not trying to imply anything by what she says. Like, when I say things, I'm not trying to offend or trying to do anything. I'm literally just stating a fact as far as I'm concerned.
Which is hugely,
Yeah.
like, so much simpler
Yeah.
than having to try
Yeah.
to gauge all of those other layers
Yeah.
of social interaction.
Problem
So,
arrives when
I
people
would-
become easily offended.
I don't know any Mass Effect fans in here,
Yeah.
but I like me and I know other people that are high functional autistic. We tend to preface like what we mean before I say this. Like I will start a conversation like, "You're not gonna like this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm about to touch this fucking out," and you know that's what like you know what's happening.
Yeah.
You know why I'm angry. You know what's about to happen. Like if you stay after I tell you that,
Yeah.
this is your fault.
See, and
This
it's
is
like-
not all your fault. I told you to touch you out. You can't be mad at this point.
Yeah.
Well, and I always kind of do that because to me that's caring. I don't know, like it's like
But I care
I'm
about you enough to
telling
give you an
this is what's
opportunity.
Yeah.
So like
You don't have to stay for this.
I do a lot of, like, please don't be mad, but, or, like,
And I think that's
I
the
know
difference
this is
between
a
man and
dumb
woman, though, too.
question,
Because you're a
yeah.
woman, so you're taught to like don't upset anybody.
Yeah.
Be more
Oh my
meek and
God,
humble
so much
versus me
coaching
being a
on that. You
man.
can't say it that way.
Yeah.
You have to control
Versus
your
me being
image.
as a man, it's like I can go and say, none of you can whip my ass in here. So therefore, I'm gonna say what I want.
I've gotten in trouble for being quiet and closing my computer and leaving a room after being asked to.
Right, and that's so weird. Like there's things you have to deal with as a woman I will never see. Just in dealing with being high functional autistic, where they're kind of like even like diagnoses are 3 times less, even though when you come to find out in
Yeah.
adulthood, like it's actually pretty equal.
Mhm.
But they don't get any of the same support
Yeah.
like the boys would get, and like kind of not coddling, but more so if you have the space to fuck up that you wouldn't get as a woman.
Yeah.
And it kind of sucks. But then also I'm black, so I have less space to fuck
Yep.
up. Also, nobody can beat me up, so I have all the space
Yes.
to fuck up. So it kind of works out.
Yeah.
are there then for high functioning autistic, like are there any books or podcasts or YouTube videos or anything where it's like neuronormals like saying, okay, this is a general situation and this is actually what's going on. Like this is what it looks like, but this is what's actually happening.
Asking manager is actually really good with coming
Talk
up with
to
neurotypical
Miss Selena right up
neurotypical
here.
answers.
Miss Selena right up there. Her podcast, Diversity, that's all aspects of diversity, but there's several episodes. One is the guy who runs Asperties is on there talking about what it's like to work with 90% autistic workforce. So that's a good podcast. That's several episodes about working with autistic individuals. And most of those are Frederick, who did that Asperger's episode, he does have Asperger's, but all the other autism ones do not have Asperger's. So you've got some neurotypical looks at it too.
Oh, nice, okay.
Yep. Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? No, we good?
Awesome.
Cool.
I just want to say I enjoyed the talk.
Thank
and you shouldn't be nervous, and you shouldn't worry about the words you're about to say.
Yeah.
Just be you. When you're talking about autism,
Yep.
be autistic.
Yes.
Be yourself.
Bring
Yep.
your
I
own
mean, in the sense of it doesn't give
No.
the audience an honest look at what
Yes.
you're doing if you're not being honest about this
Yeah,
is how I am
exactly.
day to day.
Yep. Cool. Perfect. Thank you.